my beautiful bookish friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today I am doing a different kind of booktube video. I am doing a list of books that have stuck with me that I read when I was a kid until now as an adult. And we're going to talk about why these books stuck with me and if I recommend them and who I recommend them to. So this is basically just a recommendations video of books I read when I was probably in anywhere between 4th grade and like probably 8th grade. So let's talk about them. The first book I have, you probably have never even heard of. It was just one that I picked up in my classroom one day, and it is Measle and the Wrath Monk. I am going to put pictures of the covers around me so you can see what they look like. This book is probably the first book I read that kind of dabbled into my love of things that are spooky and kind of thriller-y and like horror related. But this book is about an orphan boy named Measle. I know, super fun name there, who lives with, I think they'd say he's like his uncle or something, but I don't think they're related at all, who is a warlock who tells Measle he is never ever allowed in the attic. But one day Measle goes up in the attic and finds that the Wrath Monk, that's what his uncle is called, he's like a warlock but they call him a Wrath Monk, has this table, and it looks to be like little Lego people kind of table is the only way I can describe it. But he finds out that the little people on the table are actually real and that they are like prisoners there. They're stuck. They've been turned into plastic because the Wrath Monk only feeds them crumbs of junk food, and that keeps them plastic. And it also keeps them in very like death-defying situations. I distinctly remember one of the first characters he runs into is a construction worker who is holding a live electrical wire with a bucket of water over his head. And basically Measle gets figured out that he's up in the attic and gets turned into one of these little people too. And there's a bat that flies around at night that tries to eat them. And that's why they don't move. Like, they're kind of okay with being plastic, but they're also like terrified because what if they stop turning into plastic and they die because of the Wrath Monk having them in these weird positions. It's a very strange book, and it was like 430 pages, and it's honestly the first book that I could say I like read 300 pages in a night and ended up finishing it in just a couple days. It was super good, super weird, and I would probably recommend it more for middle schoolers just because of the content, but not necessarily the reading level. And apparently it's a duology, which I never knew because I read it kind of at the end of the school year, so I never thought about it again until like, 3 a.m. and you're thinking about books you read when you were 10, and that was one of the ones I remembered. The next one is the Clarissa Bean series. Now, there's 2 reasons why this book series stuck with me. One, because one of my friends at the time read like all of them and said I should read them. But the other thing is there's a story within a story with the Clarissa Bean series. If you look at the cover, you'll probably notice the animation style is very similar to that of Charlie and Lola, which was a show it was a British kids show, but it was also on Disney Channel in the mornings, and that's because it's the same illustrator and author, because Charlie and Lola is also a book series. But there is a story about Ruby Redfoot, who is a spy that Clarissa Bean like idolizes throughout the book. And basically I fell in love with that storyline too, and Clarissa's like ambitious girl adventures. And I read that I think I read the 4th one, or I read the first one in 4th grade, and I kept reading them all the way through 5th until basically our library didn't have any more of the books. So I think I would definitely recommend it for like anywhere between 2nd grade, probably depending on like, your kid's reading level, or your reading level if you're a youngin'. But it was, yeah, it's good for younger kids, but it also has like, that little bit of like a, girl ambition, girl power book. I don't remember a ton about them. I just remember I loved them a lot and loved reading them, and I took them places when I was reading them because I wanted to read them so bad. Next one is another series focused on a girl. I read a lot about kids who are like orphans for some reason, or like weren't with their parents, and that is the Sammy Keys series. This is a mystery series that I think honestly spurred me on to reading more mystery as an adult. This is all about a girl named Sammy Keys who lives with her grandmother in an apartment building, and she uses the fire escape to get in and out. But Sammy always gets into trouble because she wants to be an investigator, she wants to be a detective, and she tries to solve like little mysteries around the neighborhood, and sometimes like big mysteries that the police are investigating and she shouldn't be involved in. But I remember her just being like kind of this rough and tumble kid who was out in the world just trying to like live her best life of not having her parents around and having to live with her grandmother. And I think she wasn't supposed to be living with her grandmother, and that's why she used the fire escape. Like, people weren't allowed to know she lived there because she wasn't supposed to be there. And I remember there was something about shortbread cookies. But it was a great series. I think there's like 10 of these books now, maybe less than that, but I read 2 of them, I think, and I really enjoyed them when I was younger. So I would recommend those if you want to read some like age appropriate mystery, or if you want a really easy read as an adult and read some like child to middle grade level books. So the next series I'm going to talk about is actually the only series that I actually own, and that is the Pandora series. This is all a retelling of Pandora's box and the Greek mythology around that. This is Pandora Gets Jealous, and I read this in 7th grade. I bought this at Barnes & Noble one of the nights that we had like some like book fair there, and I bought this one, and this is the first one in the series. And now as an adult I have bought almost all of the rest of them. I'm only missing one. I love this series because it really made me love Greek mythology, and I think that's what we were learning about in school at the time when I got this book. It's just a different spin, and it taught me a lot about the different Greek tales, and it's one of the only books that actually paints Hera, like a kid's book that paints Hera as not this really nice person, that she's a terrible person. Not that Zeus is great either, but it kind of touches on the real Greek mythology. And the lady who wrote them is Carolyn Hennessy, and she played the neighbor on Jessie on Disney Channel. She was like the mean older lady neighbor who had really short red hair. She was always like the villain on kids shows. She wrote these, and they're super good. I mean, they're just floppy paperbacks, which we love. And they're a middle grade, I would say, just because some of, not like it's not like Greek mythology in like the deepest sense, like the real like dark stuff, but it does give you an idea of, you know, kind of the basis of those stories, and then as you get older you can explore them. But when I read them as a kid, I thought they were super good, and it made me want to explore Greek mythology more. And obviously it was good enough that I bought the series as an adult and want to continue reading it. Finally, the last book series I want to talk about is Judy Moody. If you guys don't know these, they've changed the covers. When I was a kid, they were like brown and just really simple illustrations, and the books had pictures. I think I read the first one in like 3rd grade. And that, I would say, is probably an appropriate reading level for them, or maybe even a little younger, maybe like 2nd grade. But I had these books for a while. I think I had 2 or 3 of them, and I borrowed some from the library. However, this stuck with me because I remember one of the ones I read was about Judy had to do a project about a historical figure, and she picked a female journalist who was like one of the first to ever do it back in the Revolutionary War. And it really made me look into journalism as like a career path, and sounded like something fun, and I wanted to pursue it a little bit more. And then, you know, like you grow up and kind of like move on from it, but clearly it stuck with me because I have a degree in journalism. So Judy Moody kind of picked my career path for me at a very young age. But it's funny that I read that book, and at the time it was kind of like an interest, and then I still remember that book even into college being like, I need to reread that book because I love being a journalist, and that book did a ton for me, like apparently as exploring it as a career as a woman. So, you know, Judy Moody, inspiring the youth to go into male dominated fields. But yeah, that's it. I'm sure I'll come up with more, but these are ones that I just remember like the covers of or the plots of when I was really young, and now I remember them and I'm like, oh, I should talk about those books because they're great. So if you guys want to hear more of my recommendations about books that stuck with me, obviously I own quite a few books that have stuck with me, but I'm sure I can probably scrape up some memories of books that I read that I really like or liked when I was a kid. And I bet my mom probably still has some of my reading stuff from school, because as an only child, we saved everything. So yeah, that's it for me. And let me know down below what books stuck with you even as an adult, or ones from your childhood that you loved. And I'll see you in the next one.